You do know the real reason why U.S. just attacked Venezuela. No?
Look at the implications here are really great for the Venezuelan people. 27 years, if you package together Chavez and Maduro. Think about that. 27 years.
I would like to thank Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
I promise we one day will have a close relationship between Venezuela and Israel.
I myself look forward to visit the State of Israel as soon as we conquer freedom.
And I can announce this, that our government will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. That will be part of our support to the State of Israel.
Wow, in God's will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You don't have to like Chavez and Maduro and what they did to Venezuela, but they were both anti-Zionist. And you know one thing they didn't have in Venezuela? Yes, you guessed it right. The central bank. The Rothschild-owned central bank. The one that prints money, the one that lets you borrow money at the high interest, usury. They didn't have that. They don't have this now.
Israel, the small Satan.
But we also enjoyed the support of the United States.
America, the great Satan.
America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests.
By attacking Venezuela in the fashion that they did, Trump just justified Russia's action in Ukraine, preemptively striking its opponent to defend its global interests, to defend its sovereign interest in their hemisphere. It's exactly the same language. Do you remember Trump's campaign promises? Specifically the ones regarding peace. He was going to stop the war between Russia and Ukraine within 24 hours. He was going to bring peace to the Middle East. What happened to that? Well, let me read a Bible verse. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20, right? And you see a lot of that theme in Revelations and throughout the Bible where darkness will be called light and light will be called darkness. And I think this is what's happening right now. They gaslight you, they look you straight into the face and tell you, this is not what you see. This is something different. And you accept it. And this is the theme of this show. Let's watch it.
Other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer.
Whose interest are you protecting in this area? It seems a bit out of the way. It seems in somebody else's backyard. It's somebody else's hemisphere. All those little countries and all those people and peoples of interest that you just described, they sort of fit under this, Greater Israel project, right? Those chevrons the Israeli soldiers wear on the sleeve? Yeah, they don't even hide it anymore.
Of an IDF soldier, okay? These are soldiers, Israeli soldiers, and they wear the insignia of the Greater Israel Project, okay? This is the map. Also, if you look at the flag of Israel, there are two blue lines, right? These represent rivers, the Nile and the Euphrates.
Now, let's not lose our focus here, and let's go back to Venezuela and what is really at stake here.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years.
Let me translate this. What he means is we're going to install a puppet government that's going to represent interests of other entities. And if you think it's United States, you're wrong. Because if that was the case, right, and all those endless wars in Middle East and all those other proxy wars like between Russia and Ukraine, for example, all this kind of stuff that's going on right now does not help US in any way. Look at the quality of life. Look at the economy. Look at the debt. What about the debt? Trillions of dollars in debt? To who? Central banks? Now we're getting somewhere. But they make it about drugs.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Soles.
All right. At least he's honest about oil, though.
In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and sold American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
But is it really just about oil and embassy in Jerusalem? Is it? Or is there something more sinister at play?
Maduro, most people didn't know this, whatever his many faults, I wouldn't hire him as an economist, okay? But whatever his many faults, has the most socially conservative country probably in the hemisphere. So Venezuela is just a fact. I mean, I didn't make this up. I'm not in charge of Venezuela. Just noticing that Venezuela has banned pornography, banned abortion, banned gay marriage, banned sex changes, and banned usury. You don't have credit cards with 40% interest in Venezuela.
You know what else they don't have? They don't have Zionist-owned central banks that print money and then let you borrow that money, you know, for your things, but at really, really high interest. But don't ask me. Let's see what Ben Shapiro thinks about that.
Who gives a shit? The guy's a communist dictator. Everyone in his country is eating dog. He's shipping fentanyl to the United States to kill Americans. Why do I give a shit whether he's anti-LGBTQ rights?
I don't give a shit. Maduro's against Israel. Oh, okay.
Interesting, though. Interesting correlation, right? With central banks, you get porn, you get usury, you get drugs, you get debasement of the society, destruction of the family, destruction of the man, and, you know, promiscuity of the woman. Why? Let's look into it.
It's this that they fear. That's right. I don't have no army. I just know the truth. And I'm here to separate the good Jews from the satanic Jews.
Israel Prize is going to be awarded to President Donald J. Trump for his tremendous contributions to Israel and the Jewish people.
I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I think I'm not maybe heaven bound.
I don't think we've been a sovereign nation since they shot JFK.
Who is they, Candace?
And when I say they, it's like people online say, "What do you mean by they?" I'm talking about Israel. I don't want you guys to read in between. I'm talking about Israel. So let's stop making that a taboo subject because they've gone mask down. Everything they're doing is demonic.
Yeah, demonic. Which is not that far off. We're going to look into the nature of the Zionist beast. After all, devil's greatest trick was to convince you he doesn't exist.
The other thing is I think that you got to recognize that Zionism was founded as an atheistic political movement. It was not birthed in biblical prophecy. It was not birthed in this idea of having an Old Testament revival in the land of Palestine. It just wasn't. It was a very atheistic movement that had a very secular agenda.
Zionism is for people who wanted to change the Judaism, and they transformed it into something different that totally isn't. They transformed it into a nationality. Most of them were not even religious or observing Jews.
Zionism, they are non-believers. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in the Torah. They even don't believe in the promise of the land. This is so hypocritical in Netanyahu coming with a promised land. Who promised that? God? You don't believe in God. Netanyahu was here in London. I didn't remember the last time. A few years ago, I visit. He go to eat a non-kosher restaurant. He have enough kosher restaurants here. But he want to demonstrate, I don't believe in God.
Cool, right? I showed you many videos of actual Jews saying how Zionist movement has nothing to do with the Judaism, with the religion. It's a secular movement. However, every time you listen to the Zionists, they either wear a kippah or they talk about some kind of biblical promised land thing going on, all that stuff. They constantly kind of have a conflict within them. Are we Jews by nationality or Judaism actually a religion? And it confused the crap out of everybody in the world at this point, but maybe we're here to set things straight because it's not secular. They are worshiping somebody and they want to invoke the end of the world. And let's examine this. Who they actually worshiping and how and what is coming next. Or at least what is they part of the predictive programming now, because all of that we know is by design.
Why are we seeing so many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories right now?
Well, as I wrote about in one of my books, all conspiracy theories essentially have a hint of anti-Semitism, and all anti-Semitism is based around conspiracy theories.
As the man said, all roads lead to Israel right now.
Israel needs to be protected and supported, especially in these times. Israel's being bombarded every single day by Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the little terrorist whore of Iran. Rockets and missiles every single day.
Price for the videos I'm thinking. If I say Israel, you gotta pay me a certain price. If I say Zionist, you pay me a certain price. If I say Zionist, Israel, and Jewish, that's the big three, I get paid for that. Right. Same as always. Yeah, just keep paying me the same thing. Zionist, Israel, Jewish, you pay me.
In March 2024, when this video first came out, you were the anti-Semite if you thought this video was real, because after all, Rappaport said it was fake on his socials, and you had to accept it because he said it was fake AI deepfake. But now, in 2026, this video makes a lot more sense to you, knowing what happened in 25. You know, like things like $45 million Google contract, let's pay influencers for posting pro-Israeli propaganda, and let's just purchase all the social media that is, including TikTok, and you know, the next most important purchase, X. Basically, you're all anti-Semites if you disagree with Israel. Welcome to part 3 of our show. Who is they, them? The Zionists, of course. Now let's talk about the Jews.
By the way, I don't like non-Jews referring to Jewish people as Jews. I do not like non-Jewish people referring to Jewish people as Jews.
Yeah, how can we have an equal conversation with the Goyim? Shut up, Goyim, right, Jew? Okay, without getting personal, this is kind of thing that people feel right now, right? A lot of divide, and now you cannot unsee what you've seen. You know, thanks to people like Candace Owens and other players in the game. But why is that now? Why is it allowed to happen now? We know from the previous 2 episodes that I did that they own all of the media. Why can't they just shut it down completely? Why is it Candace Owens the #1 podcast in the world telling how horrible Zionism is? Specifically the state of Israel. Why is it allowed right now? Ask yourself that. Maybe it's by design.
Today, we're going to look at how evil triumphs. Why is the world so evil? The word that we use for what is happening in Gaza is this word. You are not allowed to say this word on YouTube. The truth is far more disturbing than this. What is really happening in Gaza is a ritual sacrifice. What the Israelis are doing is quite horrific because it is really this sort of sacrifice. Why? Because 47%, almost half of the population of Gaza is under 18 years old. So the majority of people who are getting killed are in fact children. We can all see it for ourselves. And it's almost as though the Israelis want us to see it and want us to hate them, right? You can see all over the world, popular opinion is turning against Israel. This is intentional. They want the world to hate them because by doing this, they create the ultimate taboo, right? We find this disgusting and contemptuous, so the entire world will unite against Israel.
So that's the oldest trick in the book. Even Chinese used it in the military. They would put the army against the wall, against the river. So you would have to fight or drown. Fighting, you may have a chance, not in the river. So the same thing with actual origin of Masada.
So I just learned where Masada, Israel's intelligence agency, gets its name. It's from Masada. It was a mountaintop citadel from ancient times during Rome. 72 AD, Rome finally has enough of it, and they go over there and they're like, you're going to pay your taxes or surrender, the Jews get completely arrogant with them and they say, no, our God has blessed us. We're going to fight to the very last man. So Rome basically flattened all of Judea. They get up to the walls of Jerusalem, flatten the whole place, destroy the temple. Some Jews escape. They make it out to a place called Masada. Rome spends almost an entire year building one ramp to get their siege equipment up to the walls. The ramp is still there. Rome marches their siege equipments up to the towers and they get to the walls and they're like, hey, you can all surrender. We'll allow the women and children to live. We're going to go get a good night's sleep because we're coming back tomorrow. We're going to kill you all. So what the Jews did, they all committed ritual sacrifice, suicide. They all killed themselves. The men killed all the women and children, and then they one by one killed each other, and the last guy committed suicide. And I have heard that them take this as how they should defend themselves. And that's even when you hear them use the Hannibal Directive.
Hannibal Directive. It's when you kill your own people like hostages so they cannot be used as a leverage in your war efforts against you. That, by the way, goes for the nuclear doctrine as well.
They think we're bluffing. We go forward with it. We have the right to use any and all weapons in our disposal, academically speaking, nuclear weapons. And I'm tired of using euphemisms. I'm tired of saying, well, we have something, in the basement, but we won't be the first to introduce nuclear weapons in the Middle East. It's enough already. I said, no, let me bring you back to October 1973, during the Yom Kippur War, when Henry Kissinger instituted an arms embargo against us. And what happened? An A-4 Skyhawk was parked at Telnoff Air Base with some interesting weapons under its wings. And we will told the Americans, take your eye in the sky and take a good look at the airplane that's on that runway.
And I can't blame you for being in the dark this whole time and not being able to put it together, because there was a lot of effort to keep you dumbed down, retarded. And I don't mean side effects of vaccines.
The Moderna vaccine. Okay, the Moderna vaccine, the chief medical officer in charge of research and development, the person who was in charge of putting it all together is the Israeli scientist Tal Zaks. Pfizer. Who's the CEO of Pfizer? In other words, the person who heads the company. Albert Bourla, who is a Greek Jew. And then, who is the chief scientist? Chief scientist is Mikael Dolsten, a Jew from Sweden. The Jews were behind the invention and creation of these COVID vaccines that are going to save humanity now.
See, it's a lesson in gaslighting. Do they really want to save the world? Do they?
Have you taken the vaccine, sir?
No, I haven't taken it.
So why do so many people, specifically Christians, still think that Israel, specifically Israel and Israelis, are the God's chosen people?
When you've heard from a pulpit for 40, 50 years, 1948 was the key moment in biblical prophecy, because pastors who did not have the ability to receive formal education were being given Schofield study Bibles. In the Schofield study Bible, those notes basically just became doctrine and dogma for much of the evangelical world. Although no one in the New Testament is looking to this. No one in the New Testament is talking about a third temple or a red heifer.
Good. Red heifer. Finally, someone mentioned red heifer.
And so when you start studying and you realize what's going on, the veil's kind of pulled back.
Israel decided to set up permanent institutional structures to control how Americans would think about the Middle East. In 1983, Israel launched the Hasbara project, the aim of which was to ensure good press in the U.S. media. The goal was to train Israeli diplomats in communications and public relations. For example, they trained press officers in Israeli consulates in the U.S. to ensure that American journalists would write stories favorable to Israel. As one of these press officers said in the 1980s, he had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with journalists, and that a typical day would involve conversations with producers at leading news and TV talk shows about the content of the program. He described it as, in fact, quote, a joint formulation of ideas. This targeting of the American media goes on in the present day.
Jewish authors who were anti-Zionists in the late 19th and early 20th century, people like Karl Kraus and Lucian Wolff, they've been dropped into obscurity because the people funding Jewish cultural institutions are all Zionists. And the money's all coming from Israel. The majority of U.S. K-12 history teachers just conflate Zionism with Judaism completely.
You know what they say. Never go to war with someone who buys ink by the barrel. It's not just for newspaper printing. It's also for book printing, specifically education books for your children. Your grade school and high school education books for your children, like Robert Maxwell did. You know, Gasolin's father, who was the biggest Mossad agent that we know, but, I digress.
Every ism except Nazism was founded and or led disproportionately by Jews. You name it. Marxism, humanism, socialism, environmentalism, feminism, Jews.
Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country.
The actually fairly cool story of Rosa Parks, right? Which is that the NAACP had in fact recruited her for in advance, and they said she'll be an ideal plaintiff, and they'd actually said, go sit on the bus in this particular place, and then we'll have the lawsuit against the bus line. So that's true. I don't know what he actually said. It is true that was not. It wasn't like she spontaneously sat down on the bus and then they sued. But that doesn't take away from her story. In fact, I think it makes it a cooler story. I think it's cool that they actually were like, okay, we're going to plan this out. We're going to get a good basis for a lawsuit. Rosa Parks is an attractive face for the plaintiff, and do it like.
Isn't it kind of messed up recognizing that everything you learned in school specifically is not what it is, but carefully crafted lie by a master? On the other hand, maybe it's a good excuse why you were a bad student.
When I read Hitler, and I've read a lot of Hitler.
Speaking of Hitler, even Netanyahu admits to the fact that Hitler did not want to exterminate the Jews in 1933.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews.
He made a deal with some other Jews in Germany is to send them to Palestine. He was going to work it out, even after all the atrocities that they did. Apparently, they did similar things in Germany as they're doing in the Western world, Americas, right now. I'm talking about high interest loans, pornography, LGBTQ, and all those isms movements, as Dennis Prager has mentioned earlier. By the way, Nazism, some will argue, was their thing too, like Antifa, for example. But I digress.
He's also angry at the leftiness of American Jewry. He's angry at progressiveness, which has brought in all the gay movement, the LGBT movement. The Jews have led all that stuff. And the Hollywood, which has sown a lot of immorality, a lot of stuff that Jewish people do bring. See, to deny that the Jewish people have a strong blue streak, and in America, bluer than red, and that all the progressive organizations are all run by Jews or have Jewish people, or have Jewish money. To deny that Soros has a huge impact on this world and has a huge impact on the American agenda. To deny that these things exist and that he's saying you're taking our country in a way that is not its natural way. There is an argument to be made there. Hitler made the same argument. He was very concerned about communism. And he wasn't wrong that the Jews were the leaders of the communist movement. They took over the Soviet Union. It was many ways a Jewish thing.
You know what else was the Jewish thing?
And there's been a rise in anti-Semitism all over the country right now, and it's disgusting and it's horrible. People should know that one of the first things that the Nazis did, I think it was in 1933, was they burned Magnus Hirschfeld's gender for sexuality. Magnus Hirschfeld was studying trans people, LGBTQ people. Lily Elby, who the Danish Girl, the film Danish Girl was about, she had her first gender-affirming procedure at Magnus Hirschfeld's clinic. The Nazis burned it down. All of its research, and they.
So that's what the book burning was all about. You thought otherwise, right? Me too. And if you look at the Western world right now, it's a walk-in mental illness. It didn't start with Biden's administration where he hired all those men dressed like women, all that stuff. Great. It started many, many years ago, roughly 100 years ago, with Freud, where he normalized pedophilia. Some say he was a pedophile himself. But there was a little bit of mystery there too.
What you learn about Sigmund Freud is that what he actually mainstreamed, I mean, the psychoanalytic movement was quite literally a movement to mainstream gaslighting. And this is no question. Like I said, you can read Sigmund Freud's archives. This guy was not a guy theorizing that this is what was going on. He had access, learned German, read the archives, alerted Anna Freud and was like, hey, did you know your dad knew that these kids were being raped and yet he lied to the public?
Suddenly, this thing makes more sense. Now, warning, if you have a weak mind, stomach, and heart, look away.
Digging deeper tonight, new concerns about an alleged epidemic of sex abuse being covered up in New York's ultra-Orthodox Hasidic Jewish community.
A New York rabbi arrested in Beverly Hills, accused of molesting children in Brooklyn.
I was 7 times a victim of molestation, 7 separate molesters.
Now, before you get your pennies in a bunch and you say, well, Christians do. Look at the Catholic priest molesting kids. Well, this is a different show, but some will tell you that the whole thing of Vatican is also part of the Zionist New World Order movement. It's totally controlled by the Israeli mafia.
The new regulations, the first in the country, come after health officials identified 11 babies who contracted herpes from the oral part of the circumcision. 2 of them died. The Centers for Disease Control has stated the procedure is not safe.
Not only is it a safe method, it's the safest method.
Rabbi William Handler calls this a direct attack on the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community and its customs, and says government is overstepping its bounds. Cantor Philip Sherman says he's performed more than 20,000 circumcisions, 6 just today.
20,000 circumcisions? Wow, I'm sure it's not a record, and maybe it's something average number for Moyle, but it seems like his nickname should be Baby Carrots if you put them all in his mouth, of course. Apparently, this guy's against it, and he's saying, let's do it the sterile way. Let's use a gauze pad. Let's use something else. I'll tell you more. Let's not do it at all. Why are you going to traumatize a child? I mean, at this day and age, like we have clean water and showers and baths. They can wash their baby penises. They're not going to get any disease. It's not going to be like, what's the point of circumcision? Well, other than some kind of ritualistic child sacrifice, and also sucking on the blood, adrenochrome and all that stuff, the baby is so scared and in so much pain and it's so vulnerable and it's needs to be actually taken care of and nurtured, not have its penis cut off and sucked on by a strange man. Yeah, imagine how much fear and adrenaline goes through that kid.
For centuries, when a Jewish baby boy is born, the ancient ritual of circumcision is performed. But in some ultra-Orthodox communities, religious leaders, known as moyals, also engage in something controversial during the bris. In a practice known as Metzitze Bepeh, or just MBP, the moil actually uses his mouth to suck the blood from the infant's penis after he cuts off the foreskin. Meant to prevent infection and serve as a celebration of life.
Explain to me, how's that a celebration of life to sucking on the crying baby's bleeding penis? I mean, am I missing something? I'm not trying to be funny. Please explain. Write in the comments. Write a letter. Report me to Canadian government. I have no clue how this is a celebration of life. It's a barbaric, traumatizing experience. And then you have a lot of those Jewish kids grow up as victims. For what reason? Easily programmed. Just push of a button. We're all a victim. We need to defend the Israel. They don't even know what that is. They don't know the difference between the Zionist and the Jew. Coincidence? Or Manchurian candidate on the Israeli scale? Masada.
Because once you get to that and you go, what is this guiding theology? Why did Sigmund Freud at first acknowledge, as he did, openly that all of these kids were being raped because he was at the morgue? Some of these kids were dying because of their injuries. And he was at the morgue in Paris. He saw this up front. There was no dispute. The literature has been published. He's studying under Charcot. And then he does this pivot suddenly when he turns 35. And he says, never mind, these kids are not being abused. They're attracted to their fathers.
They're the sexual provocateurs.
David Bacan published a book and he relates it to and he makes a very sound argument and then proves his theory that it's called Sigmund Freud and the Jewish mystical tradition. And he relates it to the Kabbalah, this sort of Gnostic idea that you have to descend into hell and then you'll be brought up. And like the worst thing that you could possibly do, the worst sin, they believe in this idea of holy sin, is to harm a child.
Is she an anti-Semite for pointing out that mere religious ritual is not actually a religious ritual, but black magic, occultist ritual?
9 men are
sacrifice.
facing charges this afternoon after police say they dug a secret tunnel into the sanctuary of the Chabad Lubavitch headquarters in Brooklyn.
The men described by police as extremist students are accused of digging the tunnel so that they would be able to have access to the sanctuary after hours. And when a cement truck was brought in to fill that tunnel, the men stood in the tunnel, refusing to leave.
Is this, Dirk just pulled up on screen, stained mattress that was pulled out of the tunnel being carried by members of the synagogue. So there's a lot of crazy conspiracy theories. I don't want to go down any tasteless rabbit holes. But David, if you could explain why was there a mattress in the tunnels and what is a stain? A lot of folks are wondering, is this stain feces?
No, it's not feces.
What
The
is
stain
it?
is blood, and basically we did rituals. I said that before. There were some rituals that we do in the tunnels, and sometimes the rituals might involve someone who recently died, and we'll bring him down there, and we're trying to do a ritual to bring back the Messiah, which is a Schneerson, if you heard about him on the news. So he died many years ago.
The Talmud predicts that Messiah will come when darkness covers these people, meaning Gentiles and Christians. This is clarified by the footnote to Sanhedrin 99a. Thus Israel should hope for redemption because it will be a day of light to them. But why should the Gentiles, seeing that for them it will be a day of darkness? Is God entirely responsible for inflicting this suffering on Gentiles? Or does God make use of Jews to carry out his will? A cardinal tenet of Judaism is that the Jewish people are the practical, visible expression of God's will on earth. His tools.
Tools for what exactly?
The greatest lie humanity tells itself is that we have outgrown human sacrifice. We call it by different names now, and make our offering to different gods. We do it because we believe that the gods whose favor we so desperately seek, that they demand blood as the price of their favor. We do it because we cannot see any other choice. When Abraham prepares to sacrifice Isaac, he is just accepting the same bargain of blood we still accept today, that some need to die for the world to flourish.
If only they had Jesus in their life. See, this is the purpose of Jesus and his sacrifice, the atonement, the ultimate sacrifice. One of the reasons he did it so you no longer have to sacrifice in any way. She's speaking about sacrificing to who? Sacrificing what?
We offer young men we call soldiers.
Was Charlie Kirk one of those soldiers?
For a Christian that's not pro-Israel, I doubt they actually love their Bible. And I will stand by that statement. If you are a Christian that doesn't love Israel, then you take your Bible way too much for granted.
No, Charlie Kirk wasn't a soldier. Charlie Kirk was the red heifer, the unblemished cow. He was that perfect specimen for the Zionist movement. But then he woke up. But he still is a perfect specimen. He is a perfect Christian, ideal father and a husband. You know, he is the amazing man. He is all those things that embodies the young man and hopefully puts him on a righteous track. He's unblemished. At least he was. At least we perceived him unblemished. You know, and symbolism will be their downfall. Always they show it to you.
Red heifers in Israel, a sign of the end of the world?
So what is this red heifer ritual all about? Sacrifice specifically.
The arrival of the red heifers to Israel is one of the last steps before the establishment of the Third Temple, the war of Gog and Magog, and the coming of the Antichrist.
Tell me more!
Even Muslim commentators have drawn attention to the red heifers. For example, Hamas spokesman Abu Abada said the Jews bringing red cows to Israel was part of the reason for the Al-Aqsa flood on October 7th.
Go on!
According to them, the arrival of the red heifers in Israel is a sign that the Jews will soon try to rebuild their temple, possibly even destroying the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
And our role as the Jewish people is to bring this light and the teaching of God to the whole world in peaceful ways, in loving way. This is our role.
Nothing but gaslighting again. And if you think that story is just gobbledygook, old wives' tale, or some kind of ancient mythology, well, think again. They're talking about in a White House already.
Question is, looking at these renderings, and it kind of got me thinking, he's likely going to go down as
the greatest builder of this era, and you've been in on a lot of those meetings with him. Has, to your knowledge, has the subject of rebuilding the Holy Temple in Jerusalem come up?
It has not. No, it has not.
Well, this episode was fun and kind of went for too long again, but there's so much information there that we want to share about how this world works, at least how I perceive it works. And it makes sense because a lot of people are awake to this and a lot of people are talking about it, and it's no longer a taboo. Or it is a taboo, but for some reason everybody speaks about it now.
Extreme form of Jewish eschatology, or the religion, they believe that at the end of the world, Israel will fight the entire world and God will help Israel triumph in the end. So what's really happening in Gaza is that there are extremists within the Israel government who want to accelerate the process of the end of the world, where Israel will face the world. And if you think about it, the entire idea of this ritual sacrifice is to unite the Israeli population. And what's extremely disturbing and horrifying about it is that this works.
We don't do it because we are heartless. We do it because we believe that it is necessary for the world to keep running.
I believe they believe what they believe, but let's see what they actually believe and how's it all tied in with AI. You know, after all, they own all the tech platforms, they own all the data centers, they own all the entertainment. Mark of the beast, they say? Maybe. You know, if they all also own all the banking and CBDCs now is in play. But there's something greater than that. So let's look in deeper into how the actual apocalypse will play out. And maybe this World War III, that, you know, end of the world war is already here. So maybe it's Antichrist. And we're right in the middle of it. I'll see you in the next episode.